Good afternoon, everybody. My name is David Reeves, engineer with the Fountain Valley Fire Department. Today we're going to be going over all of our new Paratech equipment in a two-part video series. In this part one series, we're just going to be going over the specifications, the maintenance, and the safety. And in our second video, we're going to be going over the usage and actually showing how to use this equipment and what it looks like when you're using it. I know that this operation and all this equipment looks very intimidating, but I promise you that it is very user-friendly. It's going to make the whole operation a lot smoother, safer, and more efficient, and I really think you guys are going to like it. Okay, to begin, we're just going to start by going over all the equipment, what it is and what it's called, and then we'll go into the specifications of that equipment from there. Okay, so we're going to start on this end of the table. We have our bases, and it's easily confused because on our old equipment, we had what was on the bottom of the jack and what was on the top of the jack. You would think the bottom would be called a base, the top would be called a tip, but all of this equipment is reversible. So everything that I call a base, it can be on the top or it can be on the bottom of the tool. So that was kind of an interesting new concept. So what these are, these go most commonly on the top part of our extensions or struts. And these are called our multi-bases. And they just click right on the top, and that's what those look like. So we have 4 of those. Here's a new style or a different style of those bases. This is called a convex multi-base. It has a similar point, such as our multi-bases, except it has a very rough edge to help secure itself onto the hoods of cars or the roofs of cars. So we have 2 of those. So depending on what you need for your stabilization operation, you're going to pick between our multi-base or our convex multi-base, with the multi-base being the most common of the 2. Another thing that we've added to our complement is a 4x4 channel base. This is going to be used for shoring operations of just putting up a quick spot shore for, when that car goes through a garage door and we want to go and just make sure that that top part of the garage isn't going to fall down. So how that looks is we're going to prefabricate a 36-inch 4x4 header into this, and you pretty much just nail it through there, and we're going to have those preset and ready to go. So these are called 4x4 channel bases. Okay, moving on, we have our struts. So I know if you look here and you look over here, they kind of look very similar. These are called our struts, and these are called our extensions. How you can tell the difference is that our struts have a moving end, as you'll see here. So we have 4 different types of basic struts. We have our 37-inch to 58-inch being our longest strut that we have in our complement here. And we also have our 25-inch to our 36-inch here. And what those numbers are, the 37 and the 25, that is the length of this when it is fully collapsed. And the larger number of the 2 is the length that it can reach by that coming out. So that is your distances and ranges there, and we'll kind of get into that in a little bit. But you can tell if it is a strut or extension depending on if it has this gold end piece here that allows it to move. Okay, moving on, we have our new clusters. So our clusters now have combined a J-hook as well as our old clusters. So this is really going to help us secure and find a lot of purchase points on the bottom sides of cars as well as on the top sides of cars. So if you take a look here close, we have our J-hook that's very similar to our last setup. And we have our cluster down here at the bottom that can help us find those purchase points we were talking about. Something very important to notice is that all of these cluster J-hooks have a master link to them. So we have the exact same cluster as our old stuff, but what holds the whole cluster and the J-hook together is this master link here. And you can tell that it's a master link because it has no weld marks around it. So whenever you're going to be hooking up any of our ratchet straps to this operation at all, you want to try and get it in this master link because that's the one that has the most strength as opposed to these other ones that have welds. But other than that, very similar to our last equipment that was like this. Next thing is going to be our extensions here. So we have 3 different lengths of extensions. We have our blue, our green, and our orange. And we're going to go over some specifications of the lengths and the weight rating and all that here in a little bit. But just so you know, these do not extend. These are set lengths, and that's how you know they are extensions. So we have 6 total of these with 3 different types. Next is going to be our new ratchet straps. So we're going to get into these in a little bit too. They're very similar to our last ones, except they're a little bit longer, and they have some pretty cool new functions that we can utilize within them too that we'll talk about. So we have 4 of these ratchet straps. Something else we're adding to the complement, and you'll kind of see why more in video too. This is just going to be a edge protection for our A post if we're going to be doing a strap wrap around a post that may have glass or metal shards around it. So we'll just use this, slip it around the post, and then you can put the straps around that without damaging the straps. So that's what this is. Okay, so our next thing is going to be kind of the equivalent of what our dynamic jack was in our last operation. Except with this new equipment, we're not going to be using this all the time like we were using our dynamic jack before. What Paratech calls this piece of equipment is a strut driver. And you can tell the difference between the struts and the extensions because it has this ratchet handle, which allows full extension of this moving end here. So we'll talk about the specifications of this and how to utilize it in a little bit, but this is called our strut driver, which is the equivalent of our dynamic jacks, okay? So we have 2 of those in our new complement. Next thing we're going to be talking about is our hinged bases. And like I was saying earlier, whether it's on the tip or the base or the bottom of the strut, it's going to be called a base. So these are our new bases, and they're called hinged bases, 12 by 12 hinge bases. So this is what the strut actually plugs into here. This can go up, down, it hinges this way, and this whole thing hinges around. This is our carrying handle here, and it also has an extremely rough bottom to help grab friction and help the operation go a lot smoother on any type of surface. So we have 4 of those. Here are the other 3 of our ratchet straps for a total of 4. These are our new chains. We have, as you can see here, they're 2 separate ones. These are grade 100 as opposed to our last chain that was a grade 80. We're still going to be keeping that old 16-foot grade 80 chain as an extra tool in our cache. We've just added now 2 extra grade 100 8-foot long chains. Next, we're going to dive into all the specifications of this equipment. Okay, so we're going to go over the specifications for our Acme thread struts. We know they're struts because they move. You can change the length of these. So we'll start with our greens. These are our large struts, ranging from 37 to 58 inches. They weigh in at 22.4 pounds, and everything you need to know is labeled on the equipment. So as you look here, this is our length rating here. You go down, you have a scannable QR code that can give you more information if you need, and we have our weight chart here. So the weight rating varies on the length of your strut in operation. So whatever your length is, you'll see a ratioed weight rating with it as well. So on average, these are rated fully collapsed at 20,000 pounds with a 4-to-1 safety rating. So it goes pretty much up to 80,000 pounds per one of these struts. And as you add more to them, you have that weight sharing, and then you can end up carrying much more than that. So down here, we have our air coupling fitting down here. And we currently do not have the equipment to utilize these for what we do. It's more for, extreme USAR or trench rescue, but you can hook up air coupling connections down to that. We also have a couple more safety stickers down on the bottom. You'll see here also on the strut at the bottom and at the top of it, we have our degrees. So when this strut is deployed, it'll be able to help you determine if you're at a 45-degree angle or a 60-degree angle. With a 60-degree angle being more ideal. So that helps you as well. Moving on, this is our orange struts, and they go from 25 inches to 36 inches like we were saying. All the exact same stickers. These ones weigh in at 14.9 pounds with pretty much the exact same weight rating that you'll see here on the chart as this. So kind of going into some of the parts of these is we have our end pieces that can take the different base attachments onto here. And you'll see the only difference really about making your connections is the way that it connects here. So see how it's just a full connection ring around the base of that? as opposed to the top where it has these holes all on there. When you're connecting the different bases onto either side of this, doesn't matter, it has this pin, it attaches to it, and this, it can connect, and it doesn't matter which way you slide it on, it will connect. Up on this side, when you put these on, you need to twist until you feel that pin connect into place. So, to take off your bases, just pull that pin and take that off. So as far as these struts go, that's the only major difference about which side you're connecting to, is that if it has those holes on it, you need to make sure you twist the base to get it to connect. That's kind of the most finicky thing of this whole operation, is just being sure of that. Next, as you raise these, you pretty much just pull them to get whatever distance you need for the operation. So let's say we need it up that high. We now have our stop collar here. The stop collar you would just spin all the way down like that until it stops, and now this is secured. This pretty much takes the place of the pins from our last rescue jacks, so it makes it a lot easier. Sometimes if you get a lot of weight on these and you're having a hard time turning this, you'll be amazed when you guys are messing around with this equipment how easy it is to actually turn these and raise and lower it. But for whatever reason, if you can't, these have little channel slots here that you can use a spanner wrench for and do that. But they also have really good texture on them too, so you can really, even with a gloved hand, get a good wrench on that thing. So you'll also hear, when it's time to collapse it, you just kind of spin this down. It'll go all the way down. Or you can lift it up a little bit, get that collar all the way up, like that, and then you just let it go and it'll drop itself in. And you can hear the air releasing out of this as well. One thing to be aware of is these, if you're just holding it like this, it'll actually fall all the way out. So they pull out super easily, and you know that you are to the end of your operation when this goes to the smooth part. You can fully extend this all the way to the smooth part. So as long as this will go down all the way, that's your max extension there. So when taking a look at these, there are two main things you need to know. Is we have our gasket here and a gasket or O-ring up here as well. So that's pretty much the anatomy of our struts here, and you just want to make sure that you're not walking around to and from the incident holding it by this, because it will fall. Okay, next we're going to be going over the specifications of our extensions. So very similar to our struts that we were doing in a lot of ways, except for they do not move. So we'll start with our 12-inch extension here. Shows it, we have orange to be the color of it, and very similar to the bottom side of our struts. This is where you can attach any type of base to it, and it's the full wraparound here. So it slides on, you hear that pin pop in, and you don't have to worry about it getting in a specific hole. So it's very easy to plug that on. Here's another one of our release pins. That way we can make more attachments onto here. The great thing about all this equipment is everything attaches to everything. And it just pushes in there, the pin goes out, locks back into place, and there you go. So that is our orange 12-inch, and this has a weight of 4.6 pounds. Again, we have all of our safety rating stickers on there as well, and these do have a very similar weight rating as our Acme thread struts as well. So right around that 20,000 with a 4-to-1 safety rating. Next is going to be our 24-inch extensions. These are going to weigh in at 7.1 pounds. Very similar as the other one. Everything attaches to everything, plugs into itself like that. To take it off, you just pull the pin, pull it out, just like that. Our blue is going to be 36 inches here, and these are going to weigh 9.7 pounds. Very similar as the other ones. Okay, now for the specs of all of our different bases we have. So remember, this is our multi-base. This weighs 2 pounds. There's a lot of different uses for this, and you're going to be amazed at how this can dig into so many different materials and capture so many purchase points. Doesn't look like it would work as well as it does, but it's pretty amazing. Again, with all of our different bases being our multi-bases and convex multi-bases, That grade 100 chain fits perfectly in here for any type of lifting operations or stabilizing operations in which we're utilizing that chain. Has that pin that it's a quick release, and that's how you can attach it onto any of our struts or extensions. So again, those are our multi-bases. Our convex multi-bases weigh 3.2 pounds. Same thing with the pin. Also fits a chain perfectly on the top there, and super nice. Next, we have our 4x4 channel bases that weigh 2 pounds. Same thing with the pins here. Super easy. Next is our 12-inch by 12-inch hinged bases with our anchor ring here. These weigh 12 pounds each. We have the carrying handle here. We also have the holes on all the sides that our pre-existing pickets will go through perfectly. So we're going to be hanging on to those from our last rescue jacks because, you know, if we're ever in that ice plan or ivy and we're just not getting good footing, drive the pickets through here. Ideally, if this is the front of our strut and the strut is coming this way, you want your pickets to be right here. You don't want them to be mismatched because then it can kind of cause a different rotational force. You want it to be on the back end of where your strut is. That way it's out of your working area here and have it equal right here. So these are going to be our ideal spots for those pickets. Okay, so now we're going to be talking about our Acme Thread strut driver. This goes from 37 inches to 58 inches without any extensions added onto it. So right now, this is just the strut driver. This is rated for 5,000 pounds, and that's 5,000 pounds of the lifting mechanism. If you're going over that 5,000 pounds, the lifting mechanism will just stop working, but the strut itself can still weigh or withhold the weight rating the same as all of our other equipment. So that weight rating you see on the spec sheet is going to be just for the lifting device itself, and even then it won't you know, catastrophically fail and collapse or anything like that. It's just not going to be able to lift that much. This thing weighs 29.6 pounds, so it is a little bit heavy, but as you'll see in our video too, we're not going to be using these as much as we were using our dynamic jacks in the last operation. So now we'll kind of just talk about how to use this thing briefly. So what I've done here is I've taken our strut driver, I've attached it to our hinged multi-base, and I have put one of our multi-base heads on the top of this as well. So this is what it's going to look like with nothing attached to it. I have attached the two bases to it just to kind of make it look like it makes more sense. So basically, without getting too far into it, it is one directional. So right now we have the green arrow going up. So we want to raise this. We want to get a lifting operation going on here. And then we also have this lever here switch to a raising operation. And then it just turns one way. And you'll see it does it very slowly because it's a very controlled lift and it's a very controlled lower. So you'll see that it is very slow while you're doing that. But it's good, and when you're actually lifting stuff, we've found that it seems like it's lifting a lot faster than it looks right now. So if you wanted to lower this back down now, you pull this pin out, rotate it so that arrow is facing down, and then this little lever here, you just switch that over. So 2 steps that you need to do in order to raise or lower with our strut driver. So 1, 2, and now you're going to turn it the opposite way. Now you're going to see that it's lowering. So after you guys watch both of these videos, make sure you actually get your hands on this because it is kind of a tricky little thing, but after you figure it out, it's super easy. Okay, so these are our new ratchet straps. They are 27 feet long and weigh 5.9 pounds. So as we know, 27 feet is pretty long for what we do. And with this operation, you're going to find a lot of new ways to use these and tricks that with our last equipment, we couldn't really utilize our ratchet straps to the fullest. So we have very heavy duty hooks on both sides. You'll see one here and one there. Very heavy duty handle, very similar to how we use the last ones. The only major difference that you'll see with these is that these have a controlled lower. So it's kind of tough to see. But if you see here where these 2 clasps are at, this whole section right here allows you to do a controlled lower operation. With our last ratchet straps, as soon as you opened that alligator mouth all the way, when this thing was under tension, you would get a huge snap and release. So now what these new ones can do is if you get that tooth to this little section here, you can full on do a controlled lowering operation with that, which is awesome. So, but other than that, exactly like all the tie downs we use, open the alligator mouth all the way to adjust the length, close it, and now you're in lifting mode. A couple things that I just want to reiterate is when you're adjusting the length of this, you want to make sure that you always have at least one wrap around this drum before actually starting this operation. You need to have one wrap around that drum, or else this could at any point during your tightening operation release, because you need to have enough bites around that. So that was one thing that I really wanted to cover, as well as how we're going to be storing these. So like I said, 27 feet is super long. So, and if we were to be using these for our operation, and 9 out of 10 times we will, we want to preset with this drum not wrapped at all, just adjusted to this exact length, and right around that 3 to 4 mark right here. And then we'll have the rest as a tail. You guys will see in video 2 why we're going to do it that way most commonly. And then if you need it any longer, it's a lot easier to make it longer than it is to shorten it up in a stressful situation. Next is our J-hook cluster. Okay, so we briefly talked about this. Some of the specs of this are that this J-hook weighs 5 pounds and it has a max weight rating of 5,400 pounds. And that means whether you're doing it from this side, whether you're doing it from any of these 3 cluster attachments, or our master link. Next, we're going to be kind of just covering the usage of this. Obviously, it's going to be for our vehicle stabilization, our lifting operations utilizing the chains and our strut drivers, as well as shoring applications that we talked about with our 4x4 channel bases. Next, we're going to go over the maintenance of this equipment. So the maintenance of this equipment is very basic. These tools are meant to last a lifetime, and if we take care of them right, then they're going to last a lifetime. So we'll start with our struts over here. We talked about our air coupling here. This can be utilized to help check a couple different things. So we talked about that if you just hold that, it'll fall, right? If you just place your finger over that air coupling there and it still holds like this, that means that you are checking for a good seal inside the strut. So that's what you want to see. If you just plug that, it will not slip, okay? So after we've checked and made sure that our seal is proper, we want to take this out and we're going to inspect our bottom gasket here. So we want to inspect it, make sure there's no dirt, debris, gouges, or damage, and that it is in fact present. You'll see kind of a shiny sheen over it. That is a grease solution that we place on here to help it slide up and down through the strut. If we ever get these dirty, you have dust and debris in here, we're going to use mild soap and water on this, just like we would the rest of all of our tools. If you end up using the mild soap and water, we need to make sure that we place the grease around this entire edge here. That way it can flow smoothly in and out of the strut. So that's our first thing we're going to inspect of this. Next, we want to inspect all of our Acme threads here. We want to make sure that there's no damage, burrs, anything like that. So we want to make sure that this can freely go up and down all of the threads here. If there are any damage to the threads, you can just take a file the burrs off, and go from there. But we want to make sure that this goes all the way up and down. Next, we never want to put any sort of lubricant, grease, nothing like that on the threads themselves. Next thing we're going to inspect for is our cup seal gasket up here. So you'll see this rubber gasket up on the top. What this does is it prevents this stop collar from going all the way up to the top right there. So it has that separation there. What we want to do is use a non-petroleum based lubricant on these, and that'll prevent them from drying and cracking. That way we can get a little more life out of these. With all of our struts that have this moving part here, you never want to have your stop collar stored all the way up against it. So you want to get all the way up to that and back it off ever so slightly, because we don't want to have this damage or compression of that cup seal. Another thing, we're going to be storing all of these tools horizontally. So something just to be aware of is that when these tools are stored horizontally for a long time, all of that weight is going to be on the same side of the cup seal and the inner gasket. And this isn't really an issue for us because we're going to be using these tools so much, but they recommend to rotate these quarterly. That way you don't get that flattening of your cup seal or your gaskets. So that covers our maintenance of this. Like we said, the mild soap and water. Maintenance for these is super easy. We're going to get some parts of the extra gasket, the extra cup seal, extra of these air couplings here. They can get damaged sometimes and they're a very easy fix. Another common issue with these maintenance-wise is these pins. So these pins, everything about this tool is very streamlined. These pins are kind of the biggest thing that sticks out, that it can get hit on, damaged, and that's common for our equipment, right? These are very easy to replace as well. You pretty much just pop that out and we can order new ones and replace those very easily. Moving on, with the rest of our equipment, it's very similar to our struts. The extensions, same exact thing. Check for any damages, dirt, debris, clean with mild soap and water, as well as you'll see all the rest of our tools on the ground. The most common thing that's going to be dirty and need to be cleaned is going to be our ratchet straps. And those are going to get, they go through glass, they go through oil and gas. So we want to make sure that after every use, we are going to inspect them, make sure that there's no tears, sign of wear or damage to those, and make sure that we're going to be actually cleaning the grease off of that with mild soap and water. So as far as maintenance goes for that stuff, it's very easy, very straightforward, just inspecting for any type of damage. So next thing we're going to cover is the safety of this equipment. Overall, it's very similar to our rescue jack, so not much is going to be changing there. We want to be using bare minimum helmet, goggles, gloves, and a brush jacket. Obviously, that's for training. If we're out on an incident, we want to be in full turnouts, full PPE, helmet, eye protection, all of that. As well, making sure that, just like with our rescue jacks, that we're not placing ourselves in between the struts and the car, and making sure that we are on, when we are on the the higher risk side of that vehicle, that we're at least using chocks to get initial stabilization, and making sure that we have a good heads up of where that car could fall and making sure that we're not in that hazard zone.